Okay, so what I want to talk about right now is the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. So we just got done with all of your presentations on the people that you had for the scientific revolution or the Enlightenment. So I want to talk about how that connects together, where we go from there here, and why we're talking about this. So first of all, let's talk about the term Enlightenment. So when we talk about Enlightenment, see, really, we've been talking about this a little bit all year long. If you remember all the way back to the first week of school, one of the things we talked about was that we are an enlightened society because we think they think every person has potential and everybody has importance. The importance of the individual is a concept that's an Enlightenment concept. So the first week of school, we told you that everybody's important and each one of you is important. And you know that because we in society spend $10,000 per year on each one of you. There's a lot of importance on the individual at that point. Okay? So we talked about first few weeks of school, we talked about the Renaissance. In the Renaissance, there was also this kind of importance of the individual that people can achieve, this individual human achievement. So how that carries over to the Enlightenment is a continuation of the importance of the individual and things that individuals can do, individual accomplishments, individual achievements. All of the people that you had, every one of you had somebody and either affected society through the Enlightenment or the scientific revolution. So all of these philosophers of the Enlightenment wanted to advance society. So where did they get the idea to advance society? It came over a period of years, but there was a lot of impact from the scientists in the scientific revolution. Okay, so the whole concept of changing and questioning the existing institutions comes a lot from that scientific revolution. So all these Enlightenment philosophers, they challenged existing institutions, and that's what the scientists did. Let's talk about some of the ones who had Ptolemy. Okay, what was Ptolemy's belief?
The geocentric theory.
Geocentric theory, right? So this was 2,000 years ago. This was before the scientific revolution. So for 1,500 years, everybody in the world believed this Earth was the center of the universe, right? And then along came Copernicus, and we talk about Copernicus and Kepler and Brahe. Who had Copernicus? Copernicus believed in what? Right, heliocentric theory. So that completely changed. Okay, so he challenged the institution that Ptolemy created with Earth-centered, with the sun-centered universe, heliocentrism. So, and then of course you had Kepler. Who had Kepler? How did he add to that? Elliptical orbits, studied with math. Who had Brahe? Okay, math. Brahe was all about math and observations of the planets and stars and all that, right? So what they did is they challenged pre-existing notation, pre-existing things that everybody thought, right? Coming back from Ptolemy, all right? So that was a concept that led into the Enlightenment, the idea of questioning. So these Enlightenment philosophers, they said, well, if scientists can question the old science things, can't we question the way that government's being run or the things that the church does? Or maybe we could question economics and society and all these other things, okay? Who had Wesley? What did Wesley do? What's he known for? Human anatomy. Dissected human bodies, right? Why did he do that? Right, challenge what people believe. And there was a guy 1,500 years before him who was that? Somebody had him right here at the end. Who had Galen? Galen, right? Okay. He was an ancient Greek physician. Everybody thought Galen was right for 1,500 years till Wesley came along and dissected human bodies and really found out how human bodies worked, right? So these scientists started challenging these pre-existing, things that people thought about forever. How about Galileo? Who had Galileo? What did he do?
He made a telescope.
Made a telescope, looked up at the moon. What did he see on the moon?
He saw that it wasn't a perfect sphere and it had many craters and breaks in it.
Okay, it had craters. If it's going to have craters and rocks and dirt on it, it must be made of stuff. And what did the church tell him?
That all heavenly bodies were perfect.
It was a perfect heavenly body. It said, you're a heretic, put you on trial. He was challenging pre-existing things, right? All these things that were pre-existing beliefs. So the concept of challenging pre-existing beliefs led right into the Enlightenment. So these Enlightenment thinkers were challenging the pre-existing conditions of society, of government, of how everything worked. Okay, there were lots of other scientists, right? So you had, Fahrenheit, Celsius, Torricelli. Without those like thermometers and barometers, it was hard to conduct scientific experiments. A lot of experiments were done with thermometers, how much something, how hot or how cold something is. Torricelli, what a great invention, the barometer, right? You could tell when a storm's coming. 400 years ago, that was as good as any app we've got, right? You got a barometer, you could tell when a storm's coming. So that was great stuff. Scientific revolution. So then you get into these Enlightenment philosophers looking back at the scientific stuff that was going on and trying to apply some of these ideas of challenging institutions. Okay, so we talked about Hobbes and Locke. We talked about a whole bunch of other French philosophers that came in, and everybody, like every person you had something to do with challenging pre-existing ideas, advancing society in some way, right? So who else? Let's see, who'd you have? Torricelli and Galileo. We talked about them. Who'd you have, Brian? And Leeuwenhoek was a scientist, okay? Scientific revolution. What about Diderot?
He made up encyclopedias.
Encyclopedia. He wanted to gather all the information that they could, and then his friends started writing essays challenging government, challenging the church, challenging pre-existing everything. And the Catholic Church wrote in and said, hey, you can't print all this stuff. You got to burn all this. And I was like, no, we're not going to burn all that. This is 1753. We're not burning all these books. Okay? Who'd you have? Beethoven. How many of y'all had something with music? Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Handel, Haydn, right? A bunch of you. People, music's very important in society. We all listen to music. All of us listen to music. Music is influential in the way that our society has developed over many years. Okay, so kind of that classical music had an effect on just the way that the importance of the individual and the individual creation, because these composers, they found new ways to compose things. They found new ways to put instruments together and things like that. And we look back, we think it's really old. That was cutting edge stuff 300 years ago. Really cutting edge stuff. Okay, who else would you have? Newton. Okay, so obviously the scientific revolution. Newton was big in that, right? 3 laws of motion and all that, right? Who else? Who'd you have? And we talked about broad John Wesley. John Wesley, great preacher, right? We associate him with Methodism. So how's that connected? You talked about it earlier. That connection is made with the just importance of the individual. All these Enlightenment philosophers believed that people had value, people had worth. Okay, all right. What else? Voltaire. Give me something on Voltaire.
He fought for freedom of speech and
religious tolerance, freedom of speech. There's a whole laundry list of things with Voltaire, right? Okay. Martha, who'd you have? Martha, wake up. Somebody wake Martha up. Who'd you have? You had Montesquieu, didn't you? Okay, Montesquieu. Do you think Montesquieu was important in this whole Enlightenment philosophy? You bet he was. He's really important. What did Montesquieu say about government? What should government consist of? Or separation of powers. That's big. What are the 3 branches of government? There you go. So you're good to go. And you just look up at the U.S. Constitution. It's got Montesquieu written all over it, right? This is an enlightened way of government. Okay. Who had John Locke? Life, liberty, and okay. And then when our Declaration of Independence was written, what did it say? Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, right? So, who wrote the Declaration of Independence? Anybody? Come on. Oh, come on, kids. Declaration of Independence. TJ. Thomas Jefferson. Yeah, come on. All right. So you look at the Declaration of Independence. That's Enlightenment, right? That's John Locke. Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, but that was all John Locke. You all know that all of our founding fathers knew and read all this Enlightenment philosophy. Locke, Rousseau. They read, obviously, Montesquieu. Okay, Voltaire, Beccaria. Who had Beccaria? What was his deal? Big in the justice system, right? Why? Because back then they were horrible. The tortures were terrible, right? I can't even talk about how horrible the tortures were. And he said, he looked at the criminal justice system. Okay, so why are we going to cut somebody's hand off? They were stealing bread. They stole bread because they were hungry, right? So you don't cut their hand off. You find ways, to adjust for that. Now, it doesn't mean that you go steal a TV and say, I just want to watch TV. It's okay. Don't punish me, right? But the punishments were horribly bad back then. And the capital punishment was just beyond anything we could ever imagine right now. Okay? All right, what else? All right, let's go through some of these other things. We talked about Hobbes and the Leviathan. We talked about Locke, life, liberty, property. We call it pursuit of happiness. Here's some of these. Reason, nature, happiness, progress, liberty, responsibility. These are all great words we use. These are Enlightenment philosophy. The Enlightenment philosophers looked at this. The French word philosopher was philosophe. That's just a cool French word, philosophe. Okay? And what do they look at? Reason. Where did reason come from? Scientific revolution. Some people call it, in some textbooks you'll see it called the age of reason. Nature. Looking at what kind of rights? John Locke? That's right. Natural rights, right? We all have natural rights. Happiness. Here's another one. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Look, kids, back during the Middle Ages, people in charge, they didn't care if the regular person was happy at all. Nobody cared if each other was happy. Happiness is really kind of a modern idea. Yeah. 500 years ago, people moped around. Middle Ages, people moped around. Woke up, moped around the estate, the land. Sunday went to church, got saved, and that was great. That's all they really cared about. Mope around during the week, get saved, and Sunday you're set. Now you go to heaven. That's great. We care about happiness. Why? Because we're children of the Enlightenment. We want each other to be happy. Happiness is a greeting for us. Think about it. How do you greet each other? Hey, how you doing? What did I just say? Hey, how you doing? How you doing today? I'm doing good. So I'm asking you how you're doing, but what I'm really doing is saying, I hope you're happy. That might be a better greeting. Hi, I hope you're happy today. But that's what we say. We say to each other, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. And how are you? We want each other to be happy. Progress, this is societal progress. We want society to get better all the time. This is an enlightened philosophy. You look back at all the enlightened philosophers, look at your individual enlightened philosopher that you have, and you can look back and say, that person wants progress. Okay? All right. Liberty. Freedom, liberty, the freedom to do what I want to do as long as I'm not infringing on your freedoms and liberties, right? Okay. Lots of your Enlightenment philosophers talked about liberty. Here's the other ones we don't talk about a lot, but responsibility and citizenship. See, if you're going to have government by the general will, which many of these philosophers talked about, general will being we all get to help govern, there are certain responsibilities that we have, okay? Citizenship. There's responsibilities in citizenship. Being a citizen is different from being a subject. If you live in a kingdom, you got a king and you're a subject of the king. If you live in a republic or a democracy type, you're a citizen of that country, right? So that's an enlightened idea. And again, we're still children of the Enlightenment. Okay, so we talked about Voltaire, Montesquieu, Rousseau, all these, Beccaria, Wollstonecraft. So we talked. Who had Wollstonecraft? Who had Mary? Okay, what was her big deal?
She fought for women's rights.
Fought for women's rights. What does that mean? Here's what that really means. She wanted adult women to be treated like adults. You're treated like children because y'all are children, but when you become an adult, you should be treated as an adult. When we talk about women's rights, she said, hey, women should be treated the same as men, as adults, right? And then the other thing, she wanted girls to be treated the same as boys as far as what? Education, sure. She wanted girls to get educated. And it only, because obviously it makes sense to us. I guess a couple hundred years ago it didn't make sense to everybody, but it does to us. Okay? All right, next, I'm going to talk about salons. So here's a key, this is a key deal right here. Salons were a meeting, a gathering in someone's home. So here's what happened. In the home of a wealthy person, the woman of the house would act as a hostess in a salon. And it would be like in a big living room. So in a room maybe this size, be a little bit bigger, have some couches and chairs. And she, as hostess to the salon, she would invite people to come and they would talk about Enlightenment philosophy. I know this kind of sounds strange to us, but this is what people did. And people wanted to go to these salons. There were some very famous salons. So what they would do when they got to the salon, they would greet each other and all that. And then they might have some of the latest essays written by Voltaire or Diderot or Rousseau, Beccaria about criminal justice. And they would read these essays to the crowd, and then they would discuss them. I don't know, maybe debate them a little bit, but they would talk about all these different philosophies of the Enlightenment period, and they would talk about how they could change society. And the reason this is so important is because the next thing that we're going to go to, and the next thing that we're going to go to is the French Revolution. Okay, so the French, and I'll just say this, I think the French Revolution is probably the most important era, the most important time period, the most important series of events that happened, definitely in Western, in European culture, and probably the world, because the French Revolution changed nearly everything. Okay, the French Revolution changed the government, society, the way politics was done. It changed economics, changed the way that people related to each other, changed everything. So, and the reason the French Revolution happened, well, lots of reasons, but one of the reasons is that people started to talk about all these Enlightenment philosophies at these salon meetings, these salon gatherings. Okay, so anyway, so that's the salon. This concept of gathering and talking about Enlightenment philosophy is really huge and really important. Philosophers talked about human progress. Again, I can't say enough the term importance of the individual. It just was an emphasis on individual rights and abilities, that people can do great things, right? All right, so, and we talked earlier about Diderot's encyclopedia. These are all challenges to the church, challenges to the government, okay? And that's my connection between the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment.